The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Finally, the Senate has officially voted to reauthorize the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund for the next 73 years. 73 years. The idea here is to provide financial support to pay for health care for thousands of first responders and survivors of the attack of September 11th, 2001. It passed to the sound of applause in a 97-2 vote. These claims can be filed through 2090 and will be paid out through 2092. And Trump is expected to sign the bill tomorrow. This has been a huge, huge fight. And we've seen the House vote to permanently reauthorize it. And it was estimated to cost $10.2 billion over the next 10 years. Then Rand Paul prevented the Senate from voting to approve the bill by unanimous consent because of how much it costs. You saw other Republicans place it on hold. You saw former Daily Show host Jon Stewart get personally involved, testifying and showing up in the halls of Congress, blasting Rand Paul, blasting Mitch McConnell over it. And now it's been passed. And my understanding, Pat, is that the reason it's 73 years is based on the youngest affected victims at the time. Is that right?
That would make sense, right? Because that would probably cover them through their entire lives. And yeah, this should just be an absolute no-brainer. Of course, as progressives, we think that everyone should have a right to affordable health care. But the people at the top of that list are the people who responded to the attacks on 9/11. The first responders, the cops, the firefighters. Even Republicans should get behind that. And the fact that they weren't at first, at least some of them weren't, that's really telling. I hope it does come back to bite them. Rand Paul, Mike Lee, the 14 or so Congress people who voted against this, when they have to come up against re-election. Because this should just be...
This is sort of like when we start debating, do kids in cages deserve soap? Like, wait a second, how did this even become a debate? Like, how is this the conversation that we're having? And with this case of funding the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund, it's an issue of the way we've allowed this hyper focus that's also an inaccurate and imprecise focus on the budget, debt, and deficit to become part of the normal. Because if you don't radicalize people, and I'm using that term sort of colloquially, if you don't radicalize people with these extremely partisan views around every dollar has to be paid for with a cut or whatever else, if you don't even create that paradigm, I don't think you really even end up with this debate in the first place, quite frankly.
And we talk about how debt and deficit is a political football. Interesting how Rand Paul wants to bring up the debt and deficit now when there's something that can benefit average people, specifically first responders. But he doesn't seem to care about that when you're talking about passing massive tax cuts for the wealthy. He voted for the tax bill. And so everyone I saw on Twitter was attacking Rand Paul, rightfully so. Jon Stewart attacking Rand Paul, rightfully so. And there's really no coming back from that. Like, what is he going to argue in response? He doesn't have a good leg to stand on.
No, he doesn't. And now here's my question. How much of an impact do you think Jon Stewart had in the way this all went down? Because his testimony got a lot of attention. The picture of him standing there looking at Mitch McConnell in the halls of Congress got a lot of attention. But in the end, do you think he actually accelerated the passage of this in any way?
I definitely do, because Jon Stewart is so popular, and it makes it so that there's something that people can watch and like really get an understanding of it. When they see Jon Stewart giving congressional testimony, lambasting the Republicans who are opposed to this bill, people at a visceral level can connect with that, and they like Jon Stewart. They like the message that he's sending, and they know that if their representatives aren't going to pass this bill, that they're going to be on them. And maybe, put up a good election fight for them the next time around. And so I think it was tremendously helpful that Jon Stewart went out there and did it. It's too bad, though, that this wouldn't work on every single policy. Like the only reason that it worked is because Jon Stewart is staying silent on other things, and he's making this his focus. If he was to also talk about Medicare for all and free college and $15 minimum wage, I think that would kind of dilute the public interest in it. And I guess it's good that he's decided to focus on this one, because this is like I said before, no-brainer. Everyone should be in support of this. And the fact that people weren't, that's very troubling.
Yeah, I agree with you that he would dilute his political capital if he was becoming an activist around every issue. I'm not sure that this happened more quickly in reality because of Jon Stewart, although I'm open to the idea. But I think that this gives him a lot more political capital for the next thing that he wants to deal with, because now he is seen favorably by people on the left and right, by and large, as a result of this, other than maybe some like deficit hawk, I guess, who's like furious that this has been passed. And now this, for whatever the next thing is that Jon Stewart chooses to activate around, he will probably have significantly more political capital on that next thing as a result of his success here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think he made it a bigger story. You know, like this wasn't necessarily the top story in the country. It was probably overshadowed by Trump's racist tweet and the Mueller testimony and all that stuff. But you know, if it wasn't for Jon Stewart, I don't think the average American would have even heard about this. And when the average American doesn't hear about issues like this, it allows Republicans to have some sort of cover to vote against this stuff, whereas they can't do that if it's front page news.
No doubt about it. There's a food delivery service called DoorDash. It's an app. And for months, they have been skimming customer tips that are meant for its fleet of contract delivery workers. It's very common that companies that have these contract delivery workers, for example, Amazon now has a whole bunch of delivery people for Prime and Fresh programs that don't directly work for them. But Amazon states on the website, at least when you make an Amazon Fresh order, that the entirety of whatever tip you enter is passed along to the delivery driver. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I mean, let's at least presume that it is because they're stating that it is. Until proven otherwise. DoorDash, on the other hand, has been skimming. And so the way that DoorDash has been operating is you would choose how much to tip in the online app, and only part of that tip would actually get to the driver. There were different circumstances depending on the size of the tip, but only if you were extraordinarily generous with your tip would the tip actually get to the driver in total or close to in total. So customers were actually tipping DoorDash. And this is just absolutely insane because it's just saying, I'm going to pay extra for the delivery. This is not money for the driver. This is just me saying, oh, this is what you charge? Here, just have an extra $4 for the service, which none of us would do. Like if Comcast said, do you want to pay an extra $3 right now, like for the month? Nobody would say, sure, yeah, take an extra $3. That's effectively what this program was.
Yeah, but you may give $3 to the person who installed your internet. That's the difference there. And, you know, this is the exact same thing that many restaurant owners do. When you tip your waiter or waitress at a restaurant, you assume, yeah, some of that money is going to go to the cooks. Some may go to the host or hostess, but a good amount is going to go to the waiter, waitress who served me. Many times it's also going to the restaurant owner themselves.
Yes.
And is paying for things that you wouldn't expect it to pay for. And so I'm not happy with that practice. I'm not happy with this practice either. And it's good that it's getting some attention because if it wasn't, DoorDash would continue to do this for who knows how long.
Yeah, and the CEO, Tony Xu, now says that they're changing the policy, that now they are going to, and it's weird the way that it's being worded. He says the new model will ensure that Dashers' earnings, these are the delivery drivers, Dashers' earnings will increase by the exact amount a customer tips. I don't know why I'm so focused in on that language, but that's different than saying your tip will be passed to the driver in total. They're saying if you tip $4, the driver's earnings will be increased by $4, which I just, maybe there's a technicality there because the payments are going through DoorDash. So maybe what they mean is the $4 will be added to wages and thus taxable, which it probably is supposed to be anyway, but we know a lot of tips are not taxed. I don't know, but there's something a little weird about that wording to me, Pat.
Yeah, hopefully he's playing with the language just to make it so that he makes people understand that, like, or he gives himself some cover if they have to give some of that money to taxes or some of that money has to go somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, there's every reason in the world to be skeptical of them.
Yes.
You'd like to think that when stories like this come out, the owners and operators of companies decide to be like forthright and say, we messed up on this. We're going to do right by this and change our policy. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes they still try to weasel their way out of things.
So my connection to DoorDash is, do you remember when, I think it was earlier this week, we talked about the Equifax settlement. And I mentioned that I've been dealing with bogus charges on my credit card, blah, 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 blah. All of the charges have been bogus DoorDash charges. Now, it's a mere coincidence. It has nothing to do with DoorDash, I don't think. I've never actually used DoorDash. Here in Boston, I basically don't do delivery because I just think it's kind of silly to pay a delivery fee. And sometimes the delivery fees are ridiculous. And I live so close to so many restaurants that I'll just call and then pick it up. I'll either walk or I'll drive over. So I've never used DoorDash at all, but all of the fraudulent charges that I've been dealing with on my credit card have been DoorDash from, various restaurants, typically on the West Coast. So that's just a coincidence, I'm sure.
Well, that's good that you don't use DoorDash, because that may have been something that slipped by. Like, you wouldn't have noticed those fraudulent charges if you used DoorDash, because you'd be like, oh, yeah, I ordered pizza last week.
Right.
I ordered Chinese food this week. So it makes sense that there would be extra charges associated with that. I guess the other flag would be that it's happening on the West Coast, though.
Right.
That may raise an alarm, too.
Well, the crazy thing was, when I was out for the Joe Rogan appearance, some of the charges showed up there. And I actually looked at it and I said, that's interesting. Maybe, is it possible that a restaurant I went to processes payments through DoorDash or something like that? And then I realized, no, that doesn't make any sense. That's not the case. It just so happened I was in California for some of these fraudulent charges, and that's it. But anyway, DoorDash has been blocked by my credit card. They are not allowed. Even if I wanted to order from DoorDash, I wouldn't be able to, because they've completely blocked it at the systemic level.
Good thing there are alternatives, though. Like Uber Eats is one of them.
Yeah.
Haven't tried any of these myself,
Neither
because
have I.
I live close to restaurants as well.
Yep.
But maybe one day I will, and we'll have to tell the audience about it.
We will absolutely tell the audience if that happens. New York is the first state in the country to outlaw the practice of declawing cats, which is a procedure that animal rights advocates for a long time have said is both inhumane and unnecessary. The technical name for declawing a cat is an onychectomy. I hope I'm saying that correctly. It's been banned in most European countries. Some Canadian provinces have banned it. Some U.S. cities have banned it. This is the first time a state has banned it. And I don't know that much about it, Pat, but I imagine that declawing a cat is a traumatic incident for the cat. I do understand the desire of so many cats that I have just decided to, pet. Everything seems to be going fine. And then the next thing I know, they are just like scratching up my hands with their claws. So I understand the desire, but the solution is not to declaw the cats. It's to stay away from the cats, which is what I do now.
Yeah, and people also want to declaw their cats, not just so they don't get scratched by them while petting
Furniture.
them. It's also furniture getting scratched up.
Yeah.
And I actually know some people who decided to declaw their cat, and let's just say that I'm no longer friends with them. It was that serious to me.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's wild. But yeah, this is absolutely the right decision. More states should follow suit, because I think we as human beings seem to think of this just being like a nail removal. Like, let's say all our nails got removed. Like, that wouldn't be so traumatic for us. But you're actually amputating the bottom bones of these cats' appendages.
Right.
And all, the nerves and the tendons that go along with it. So it is very, very painful. And the veterinarians who perform the surgery, they do give some pain relief to the cats experiencing the surgery, but you don't entirely know what the cat is feeling. You don't know how much pain they're actually experiencing. So it does seem like it's actually a traumatic surgery, and it's just not worth the benefits of not getting scratched as humans or having your furniture marked up. I think if you don't want your furniture marked up, just don't have a cat. That's
to
my
mention,
result.
you don't even know if the removal of claws violates the religious beliefs of the cat, and that could be a complete other type of restriction on religious freedom as well.
Yeah, and if you have an indoor cat and you decide to declaw it, and then indoor cat gets out for a few days, goes missing, how is it supposed to survive out there in the wild? It's not going to be able to kill anything. It needs those claws. Just like Miss Muffet, my cat, who we know has gone on to kill countless birds, and that was another scandal that we had to deal with early on in my tenure here.
Yeah. Now, adopting a cat who's already been declawed is totally fine, right?
I think that would be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the $1,000 penalty that veterinarians face for declawing cats in New York, I don't think that's sufficient. I think they should be charged with a feline.
Very, very good. Very, very good.
Thank you.
When did you write that one? Jeez.
I didn't write it down, but I was reading the article and I thought of it. So.
You know what I really don't like? I don't like it when when people remove the tails from dogs. I think that that's really stupid. When dogs have their tails docked, I see that all over the place. And it's like, I guess if I was adopting a dog, I wouldn't hold it against the dog. But what's the point of that? Just let the whole tail be there.
Yeah, you don't even know why people do that?
I think it's just
like why did they, I've never heard of that.
It's for the appearance.
Really?
Yeah.
Is a long tail not aesthetically pleasing to people?
Apparently not. Yeah.
You know, I like long-tailed dogs just as much as I like short-tailed dogs. I have nothing against any of that.
I find it really odd looking when a dog that clearly should have a long tail has like this little nub that you can tell is moving around. It's like, what are you doing? Same thing with, they do something like, I don't know if it's called cropping or docking the ears, which also is just like, what are we doing, people?
Yeah, I wonder if the dogs who wrongfully had their tails shortened can go through a procedure to elongate the tail back to its normal size.
Elongate, that's interesting.
Yes. I think we'll have to look into that and maybe cover it on tomorrow's bonus show.
Yeah, I'll make a phone call about that. Thank you very much. Okay, anyway, I think that this is the right decision. This doesn't need to happen. It's like neutering and spaying, okay. Declawing, come on. Cutting the tail off, give me a break. Maybe I bet somebody will email me and they'll say, no, David, the reason they cut dogs' tails is because sometimes the tail will cause bacteria to build up and the dog will get an infection like below the tail or something. I hope that that's not the case, but I'm against it based on everything I currently know, I think is how I would say it. Yeah. Okay, that does it for today. New show, new bonus show coming up tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.